In this lesson, we're going to explore and explain EFIT's menus and administrative functions. The lesson will be divided into 5 sections. In the first section, we'll show how both your final EFIT image and the entire session are saved to disk. In section 2, we'll look at EFIT's file menu and how to set your preferences for some of its features and behaviour. In section 3, we'll show how EFIT can easily reload your session if the computer should crash, and we'll also explain how to step back in time to see the EFIT image at any stage of its evolution. EFIT's help menu is then described and explained in section 4. And finally, we'll tell you a few handy shortcuts when you're using EFIT6 which are not contained within the graphical menus. Note that you can use the index in the notes below to directly access any of these specific sections. In this section of the lesson, we'll explain how to save the final image and the EFIT session data to disk. To save your EFIT sketch, click on the Save icon. EFIT6 confirms the graphics file has been saved in its default folder. By clicking on the button Show in Folder, you will open a folder in Windows which contains the final graphics file for publishing, forwarding or printing. It also contains a file with the same name as the graphics file, but of type EF6. This file contains a record of all the steps that have been taken to arrive at the final image, and it can be loaded by EFIT6 to restore the construction session. To print your sketch, you have 2 alternatives. The first is to save, view the file in the folder, and then drag and drop the graphics file to an external program, and from here we can print independently of EFIT6. The second option is to use EFIT's print facility. Note that you have 2 options. You can print the image only, or you can include the information entered at the start of the session. Thus the image only, or here we include the information entered at the start of the session. You also have options to save as PDF, or save the image within prepared Word or Excel templates. In this section of the lesson, we explain the file menu and how to set your preferences within EFIT. The file menu gives an alternative place from which we may execute a number of functions which are accessible elsewhere on the interface and which are explained in other lessons. There are also 2 which require explanation here, and these are Load Step and Preferences. We'll begin with Preferences. The Save options allow us to specify the preferred type of graphics file for saving the final image, and they also allow us to specify the folder inside which we want to save our EFIT data. The Export option allows us to specify the preferred paint program as PaintShop Pro, or gives explicit instructions to set an alternative paint program as the default. Note this procedure for an alternative paint program need be done once only, and EFIT will remember your preferred program in all future sessions. The print options allow the image background to be alternatively set to white, to add an explicit statement to the print report that the image is an EFIT6 composite, or to set the print mode to black and white rather than colour. The Miscellaneous tab contains an option to select the language of operation and some other specialist options. Briefly, the specialist options are as follows. The computer makes a click sound when you select an item. This is okay when you're learning, but it quickly becomes irritating, so it's best left switched off. The deterministic mode is only something ever used in person-to-person training courses with multiple participants and should be left switched off. The option for the manual URN enables you to define the file naming convention for your EFITs rather than using the default. We suggest you leave this unchecked unless you have some very good reason for changing it. The blending effect option smooths the transition between facial hair and skin and generally results in a more natural appearance. We suggest you leave this switched on by default. And finally, there's an option to make the tool icons larger and more visible by spreading them over 2 columns. In this section of the lesson, we explain how you can step backwards and retrieve an earlier version of the EFIT image. It can very occasionally happen that having arrived at a certain point in the construction of the EFIT sketch, the eyewitness wishes to retrace their steps and go back to an earlier step in the procedure. This can be achieved through the load step function under the file menu. Each step at which the eyewitness confirmed a particular change to the face is listed together with the time at which it took place. By clicking on the corresponding load button, the EFIT image is loaded as it was at that time. If desired, new changes can be made to this image and the construction process can proceed afresh from this point. In this section of the lesson, we describe and explain EFIT's help menu. Help Topics points to Visionmetric's YouTube channel, where you can watch instructional videos and get other useful information about training and products. User Guide will open the EFIT6 User's Guide, which is embedded in the software as a PDF file. This can be saved and physically printed as required. Assuming you have an internet connection, Website will take you directly to Visionmetric's website. Contact will open your default email program so that you can contact us. View License enables you to see the current status of your license. Note that EFIT6 is generally protected by USB license keys or dongles, and the key must be inserted in a USB port for you to view the license. The remaining tabs are only needed when Visionmetric sends a new license or updates your existing one. They are very simple and explicit instructions are given at this time, so there is no need to discuss these here. In this final section of the lesson, we outline some of the useful functions that are not contained within EFIT's menus. There are several useful functions that are not accessible through EFIT's graphical menus, but only through the keyboard. One of these is very important to know, and the rest are definitely advisable. When we select a hairstyle or other accessory, we may sometimes want to load 2 or more at the same time. A left click will load and replace any item that's currently loaded. If, however, we hold down the Shift key and left click, the item will be added to the one currently loaded. The same principle applies to all accessories, and also specifically when we use the Move tool. Thus, if we wish to make the eyes a little larger and then move the eyebrows closer, we can manage them in pairs. Holding down the Shift key, we select both eyes, left click for the eyebrow, shift click for the second eyebrow, and then we can lower them. When the eyewitness is viewing groups of faces in the easy mode, right click of the mouse on a face will zoom to full screen, allowing a closer look if needed. Either a left or right click will zoom out to normal size. When viewing groups of accessories in the film strip, you can choose to inspect a smaller number but on a larger scale by moving the mouse cursor over the border until you see an up-down arrow. You then left click, drag and release the mouse button.